Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Jessie, and welcome back to another episode of Rewire to Inspire. This show where we'll dive into self-love, learn tangible ways to rewire the brain, and discovering your soul's purpose. The goal of Rewire to Inspire is to encourage listeners to begin doing the hard work, to get curious and open to maximizing your life. Our mindset shapes how we live. Depending on life events, traumas, and personal experiences, our mindsets are all vastly different. However, one thing we all have in common is the ability to rewire our mind, to change the narrative, and to pivot our lives. I hope you leave each episode with the belief that you are so worthy to live a life true to you. I look forward to chatting with you every single Tuesday and Thursday and helping you grow exponentially in all areas of your life. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Hello, you guys, and welcome back to another episode of Rewire to Inspire. I am your host, Jessie Brown, and I am so excited to be jumping on the microphone with you all for episode number 140. I hope you are all having an incredible Thursday, an incredible July so far. I know that I have absolutely been just enjoying this time of year. The days are so much longer, and when we have sunshine until 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, it's the best. I love it so, so much. So radiating some love to you guys. If you missed Tuesday's episode number 139, 3 of the most common reasons people burn out working from home, I definitely encourage you to check out that episode. Full transparency, I was having a really hard time getting into flow. Some of my words are mumble jumbled, but I do think that the message still remains the same. And what I'm trying to reiterate in that episode still shines through. So I definitely encourage you to check out that episode if you haven't already. For today's episode, number 140, we have 15, not 3, not 5, not 10, 15 reasons why we don't heal. 15 reasons why you might not be healing. And this episode started with me having around 5. And then as I was sitting there brainstorming, I just kept hammering reasons why we don't heal. And these are some of the most common reasons that I've seen for myself, but also having worked with hundreds of clients at this point, of reasons why I feel they haven't healed, or reasons that have averted them to beginning their healing process prior to beginning to work with me. And so my goal of today is for even one of these to land for you guys. If one of these lands, hopefully it makes you feel not alone. We all have different reasons in which we avoid healing, different reasons in which we avoid looking into our past. And I understand that it's a scary thing to do. And we all have a different relationship with what the word healing even means for us. Right now in this moment, I want you to ask yourself, what does healing mean to me? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Do I even think I'm worthy of that? Do I have anything that I need to heal? There's so many dualities and things that we can ask ourselves around this subject, but really what I'm talking about when I say the word healing is your past been stored properly? I use an analogy all the time from the movie Inside Out. And although it's a little bit different, I'm going to go high level what I mean. So if you've seen this movie, you're going to know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, stay with me. Basically, in this movie, they do a really, really good job of showing how our memories are stored in our brain and in our body. And they do this by showing us like these. I want you to think of if you've ever gone bowling with the big balls or even the little ones, whatever. Picture like a bowling ball. And our memories are like these bowling balls. And if it's a memory that our brain has determined as not being traumatic, meaning it hasn't overwhelmed our system, it's going to store it properly. Some of them go to long-term memory, some of them go to short-term memory, and some of them are just kind of lost because they're irrelevant. And we all have those that just kind of, they cease to exist, although they can exist if we see a picture or a video or something that pokes that we can remember. But basically, they're all stored properly. However, when we have these experiences in our life that would be considered as a trauma, so a big T or a little t trauma, and the definition of trauma short form is anything that exceeds one's ability to cope. Anything that is too much for your mind or your body. And so it assesses it as being too much. And so what it does is it turns our thinking brain offline. That amygdala is activated. We are shifted into a different state. When that happens, for that period of time in which we are experiencing that trauma, that ball of memory, if you will, that bowling ball, whatever, it's almost like our brain doesn't know what to do with it. And so it puts it in a different department. It's like it puts it on a bookshelf, if you will. And it sits on that bookshelf. And then that's when triggers come in, because anytime then we hear something, we see something, we smell something, we taste something, we touch something that reminds us of anything in that memory ball, what our mind does is it takes it and it kind of shakes it a little bit. It might fully bring us into our consciousness and we're remembering that memory. Maybe we're feeling it in our body. We're feeling off, we're feeling icky, but we're not sure why. It's because a part of us has associated it's remembering something that has to do with that unstored memory. And this can also work with our quote unquote good memories. That's why nostalgia is so powerful, because when we hear or see or taste or smell something that kind of reminds us of a phase in our life, it can also work in reverse in a good way. But that's why triggers can come in. And so what I mean today when I talk about healing is, have you taken those memories that have just been stored on the bookshelf that are kind of in order, they're messy, they're untouched, and have you brought them into your consciousness in a right way, in a loving way, and healed them so that your brain can store them properly? We all have at least one of these balls, if you will, or memory on that bookshelf. We would be naive to say that we don't. And although our trauma will never cease to exist, the emotional overload in which it poses us can lessen. I have traumas in the past that if I were to talk about them 5 years ago, I would instantly go into a state of dissociation. It would very much overwhelm my system to even talk about. I'm now able to talk about them and remember them, but there's less of an emotional pull associated with them. It's almost like I know that they're there and I know they exist and I acknowledge them, but I've stored them now. I've done the work to heal them. And so that is what I'm talking about today. When I say 15 reasons why we don't heal, I'm really saying these are 15 reasons why our memories aren't being stored properly or our traumas aren't being stored properly. So the first reason in which we don't heal is because you haven't acknowledged or admitted your traumas. This is the biggest reason that I see with clients. And I also seen this for myself. Before I started my position of being a counselor, I remember I held the belief that I had no trauma. I'm laughing now because I'm like, oh girl, you were so naive. Like, come on. You just coincidentally studied social work and done all this stuff because you just loved it. No, a part of your higher consciousness was like, hey, I think you should probably learn about this stuff for a reason. But if you don't acknowledge or admit that you have experiences in your life that have shaped you into who you are and that have affected you, my friend, you are being naive. Now, this is a various degree in which our experiences are different, right? So we have something called big T trauma and little T trauma. Big T traumas are basically massive events that you can think of. So a car accident, domestic violence, any kind of abuse. It's more so anything that could be a continuous or an ongoing event over and over again will typically lead into a big T trauma. Now, not always. It could also just be one horrific event could be a big T trauma. Little T traumas, and I don't want to decipher for you what is a big T trauma or a little T trauma, because I think that that's only something we can self-assess for ourselves and something that we can only validate for ourselves. But basically, we all have at least one big T or little T trauma. It goes as deep as to say, I was reading a book, I believe it was a Gabor Mate book or a Bessel van der Kolk book. I can't remember which one. I think it was In Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And he was saying even breaking eye contact with a baby who is looking at you is quote unquote traumatic to the brain, because that baby was having a connection with you and you broke it. Now, I'm not saying, oh my God, we're traumatizing all these babies. I say that only for us to hold the consciousness that we all have stuff that has shaken our snow globes, that has affected our lives. And until we acknowledge and admit that, and from my perspective, the reason in which we don't is because we know there's shit there. We know there's pain there. We know there's something we're hiding. If we're naive enough to say that we don't really have anything, there's at least something that you're hiding. Even if you haven't fully assessed for yourself how it's impacted you or affected you, Until you do that, you cannot heal. Until you even just validate for yourself that you have stuff in your past that has affected you and has hurt you and has shaped you into who you are. That's the other thing, right? When we say it's shaped us into who we are, we're like, well, it's just a part of me. It was supposed to happen, like da, 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 da. Yes, great, fantastic. But in the moment, did it feel like that? Or does it feel like that now looking back? Those are two very different things. Okay, I'm going to have to hammer through these if we're going to do 15. Maybe we'll have to do a 2-part to this if this is too long. Number 2, sitting in the discomfort of the truth. It's hard to heal if you're not able to sit in the discomfort. When I went through my healing phase, so I worked with a psychiatrist for roughly 3 years. Every single one of those sessions, I felt like I was going to be sick. I felt uncomfortable. I wanted to leave. I couldn't wait for it to be over, although part of me loved being there because I knew it was helpful and he was fantastic. We have to learn to sit in the discomfort of the truth. We have to learn to sit in the discomfort of our experiences and things that we've gone through. No one said that healing was an easy thing. In fact, from my perspective, it's one of the hardest things that we can do, which is why I believe we have such deep intergenerational trauma, why we have a system that is breaking, because only a few select people are willing to turn within and to do the healing. I do think that my generation in specific has been one of the first ones to start to do the healing because we have so much more awareness and knowledge and evidence of how it impacts our body and brains. But we as individuals need to hold the responsibility of sitting in the discomfort of healing our past. And until we do that, you will not heal. It is not easy. It is challenging, but it is far more rewarding than living a life where you feel you have to suppress everything. Wouldn't you rather feel discomfort for a couple months, a year, than have your whole life be squished and suppressed into all this nihilism of how you're truly feeling? I encourage you to ask yourself and hold that duality for yourself. Number 3. Oh, okay. I wrote this one and I'm like, what was I trying to say? This one's huge. Holding people's actions accountable. And then I wrote down beside it, parents especially. I truly believe a large reason why we don't heal is because we have a hard time letting people be accountable for their actions. And I'm not saying this in a way that to heal, we need to bring this awareness to people in our life and like let them know we're holding them accountable. But has a part of your brain not even allowed you to admit that things that your parents or family has done has impacted you? I'm working with one client right now and she's heavily dealing with this because she doesn't want to admit to herself that her parents hurt her. But until we give the proper people the proper accountability, even in our own consciousness, guess who is going to feel that burden? Us. And that's when we have individuals walking around that are hyper-focused on making sure everybody's okay. We're hyper-focused on making sure nothing goes wrong, making sure everybody has what they have. We've learned to become so good at controlling situations, and that comes from not having proper accountability of who gave us this pain. We take on that responsibility for ourselves. I work with so many people that are hyper-independent, and this is the biggest reason why they're not healing. This was my biggest reason I wasn't healing. I love my parents to freaking death, and I am beyond grateful for them every single day of my life. But it would not be okay for Jessie to not tell herself and to give herself that validation that, yeah, some shit your parents have done has hurt you. And guess what? Their parents did the same thing to them. For some reason, when parents come into the equation, we can get really weird with it. We have a hard time letting them feel accountable for their actions. And I know now in my heart and in my mind that my parents did everything that they could from their awareness to be the best parents that they could be. But it doesn't mean that experiences and situations didn't hurt, didn't affect me, didn't deeply traumatize me. And until I was able to admit that to myself, and even saying that out loud feels icky, but I know that I have to say it because I have to lead by example. How is it that you're able to hold people's actions accountable instead of holding all of that weight for yourself? Yes, we have self-accountability at play, but we also need to be able to heal our own stuff. And we can't do that if we're taking responsibility for everything. Again, I'm not saying you need to go and blame everybody, but have you forgiven them? Have you forgiven yourself for those situations? Have you identified who is properly accountable for certain experiences in your life? Number 4, you've told yourself a story that has lessened your experiences, aka downplayed your experiences. I hope everybody would put their hand in the air if I were to ask the question, how many of you guys have lessened your experiences? We've all done this. We are designed and wired to focus on the negative. 80% of what we feel, think, do, we have that negative lens on. And again, we do that as a self-protector. For some reason, when there's pain at stake, we are so good on focusing on the good. I'm working with another client right now, and she is in a toxic relationship. And it's very easy when we're in a toxic relationship to forget about the bad things and focus on the good. It's almost like we're trying to reiterate and tell a story to ourselves of why we should stay. And there's so many factors at play with this, narcissistic behavior and like past trauma, so many things at stake. But for some reason, we're all so good at lessening our experiences. I've had clients tell me some of the most horrendous things, and they're looking at me dead serious, smiling or laughing. Now, I know, based on what I know, that is just a protector, because if we fully feel it, it hurts too much. It's too overwhelming. And so we put on these personas, we put on these protector parts. But I want you to know how much that's holding back your healing. If you haven't fully admitted how much something sucked or hurt, you're not even allowing yourself to know the significance of it. If you haven't even given yourself that respect of knowing how much something impacted you, my love, that is hurting your heart and your soul, and you deserve to have that truth admitted to yourself. I remember after my basketball experience with my coach, I downplayed that like insane amount because so many people liked this coach. I never talked about it. I kept quiet about it because every time that I would talk about it, someone would be like, oh, it wasn't that bad. How many of us also do that to each other? Two people could experience the same thing and one person could have PTSD and one person could not. It's all about what are our coping strategies? What is our resilience to trauma? What is our resilience to pain? We are all different individuals. So you listening, I want you to know that if you've experienced something and you know that it fucked you up and it hurt you, do not apologize for that or lessen that experience. I've seen this time and time again, and then shame comes in. And guess what shame does? It blocks us from healing. We have to stop lessening how much experiences have affected us. If it hurt you, own that it hurt you. If it didn't bother you that much and someone feels like it should have bothered you to a degree, that's also not relevant. That's not your story. That's not your narrative. But that is number 4, you guys, is we're so good at lessening our experiences and downplaying how they've affected us. We need to stop doing that. And I encourage you to get around a safe person, a therapist, a counselor, whatever, that can allow you to hold that space. Because often when we lessen our experiences, it's because we're around people that maybe have no awareness of trauma, no awareness of mental health, and are just like, oh, you're fine. Like, button up and keep going. Brush it off and keep going. Be tough. You're a man. Be tough. It's like, oh my God, what if that's actually really hurting and affecting you? And I'm sorry if nobody's ever told you that, or I'm sorry if there's an experience in your life where you felt like you had to downplay how it affected you. You did not deserve that. And I have to give myself that same apology that I'm so sorry to myself for lessening experiences. We're so good at that, you guys. So good at wearing these fake masks and pretending that we're okay. Let's just stop doing that and see what happens. And if you ever need support with this, please reach out. That is what I'm passionate about. That is what I do, is I support clients, and I like to hold that space. One of my favorite compliments that I get from clients is, you're the first person that's allowed me to feel safe in my experiences. That is the narrative that I want to bring into each and every session, is I'm never going to shame you. I'm never going to blame you. I'm here to hold that space for you to open up if you've never had the opportunity to do that. I want to create a unique space for people to come unapologetically and just say it as it is. Tell me your experience from your perspective, not with the bias of mom or dad or your partner, or your cousin or your sister or your friend, your story. I want to hear your story from your perspective. So I'm definitely going to have to do 2 parts to this. Let's hammer through as many more as we can. And then I think I'm going to do a second part on this episode. Number 5, kind of just talked about this a little bit, but you're shameful about your past. A large reason why we don't heal is when we look into the past and we think of an experience, if we feel shame around it, guess what our reaction to do with, what do we do with that? We squish it down. We don't want to think about it. We tell that thought to scurry on. When we feel shame about something, typically when I feel shame, I feel it in my stomach. I feel nauseous. I feel icky. And I want to avoid it like the plague. One of the best ways, number 2 and number 5 kind of go together, sitting in the discomfort. When you're feeling shame about something, how can you sit in that discomfort? Is the shame coming from how others will perceive you? Is the shame coming from a narrative you've told yourself? Is the shame coming from an action that you did or something that you did in your past that you don't want to think about? Is the shame because a part of your experience maybe involves somebody that you care about? I've seen this a lot with sexual assault healing clients. So much of their shame was because a part of them felt like it was their fault. Or if they knew the individual involved, they felt like they had to feel bad for it because they could have done differently. Here's one thing I feel enticed to share in this moment is when we are in an active state of fight or flight or an overwhelm, I want you to know that your conscious mind isn't there. Meaning when we do stuff out of impulse, when we're in an overwhelmed state, your body took over. It hijacks. Basically, our amygdala, we view it as like our hijack system. It takes over for us. It does that so we can protect. And I think so many of us feel shameful after an event because we're like, well, I should have done this. I should have known better. I should have left sooner. I should have said this. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. Although, yes, we are accountable for our actions and we need to know that, we also have to know that we cannot shame ourselves. And obviously there's varying degrees of this. If you're just fighting with your partner and you're saying, oh, I was taken over and I didn't mean to call you those names. No, absolutely not. I'm saying when you look at your past pain and experiences you've been through, there might have been a part of you that couldn't have done any different, that didn't know any different. How many of us hold shame from experiences from when we were a teenager? It's like, but at the time, that's all you knew. That's all you had experienced. And so how can you begin to forgive yourself and lessen that shame so you can go revisit that and heal it properly? I know it's uncomfortable to bring up past experiences, especially those with shame. Shame was the biggest word that I can think of to encompass working with clients. Shame is the biggest thing that I see all the time. Even if it's not directly the word that's correlated, I can tell that that's what's shining through. Shame will ruin our life and it will run our life until we begin to ask ourselves, why am I feeling shameful about this? And then why to that answer? Why to that answer? And digging deep and sitting in that discomfort. Okay. Number 6, you're protecting self or others. This kind of ties into the parent one, but how many of us don't want to heal because we're trying to protect another person? Especially if this is someone in our life that we once really cared about. It can be really, really hard to heal a memory because we don't want to hurt anybody, even though that person might not even be in our life anymore, but we want to protect them. I have one ex-partner in my mind that I'm thinking of that I remember when I was in therapy. When he would ask me questions about this individual, I would protect him a lot. And I realized in hindsight, it wasn't him I was protecting, it was myself. If I told a brighter story about him, that would make me appear better, meaning I wouldn't have to visit the deep pain that was there. Often when we protect other people, again, there's that shame piece of how is this going to be associated with me? How is this going to come back on me? And so I remember he just posed me the question of, what are you most afraid of in this situation? What is your reluctancy to telling me the truth? And I realized in that moment that it's because I needed to protect myself. I felt shameful about staying in that relationship. I felt shameful that I allowed certain things to happen. And so you listening, what's an experience in your life that maybe you're not healing because you're protecting yourself or you're protecting others? And I want you to know that that's a coping strategy. We're really good at telling ourselves a false narrative or making a story sound better than it is so that we don't have to fully admit the pain in which surrounds that experience. But I want you to know that in so many ways that is hindering your healing. Sometimes we have to open it back up and be truthful with ourselves. And that can mean also being truthful about our actions as well, right? Having that self-awareness for self as well and accurately assessing. But that is number 6, is you're protecting yourself or others. The last one that I'm going to talk about on today's episode, and again, I'm going to do a part 2. Number 7, you're scared to revisit your past. 100% normal. If we've pushed away our past so much so that we never visit it, it's probably a sign that you need to. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's probably going to be hard. But if you're scared to revisit your past and to go there, a part of you probably needs to. I talk about inner child work all the time on here. We talk a lot about our younger self, whatever resonates with you, younger you, whatever. If you're afraid to go visit them, what emotion are you afraid to feel? What experience are you afraid to remember? What consciousness are you afraid to bring back into your mind? We avoid the things in which bring us discomfort or pain or unpredictability, unsureness. And so a reason you can't heal is because you're not going back to visit it to heal it. This took me a long time to be able to go through my past, and something I used to do with my clients was called a life map, where we would go through ages 0 to whatever they were at the time, and we would almost do a timestamp. Every single year you can remember something that happened. I want us to write it down. I want to paint a picture. I want to create a map of your life. And so many clients were really, really good at doing like the last 5 years of their life. But before that, it was like, ruh-roh, nope. They were too scared to go visit that part of their life. Some of us have blocked out memories of that time of our life if it was a really hard chapter. But knowing that slowly over time, the more that you can begin to revisit your past in a healthy way, it's going to strive you towards a brighter future. Now, we don't want to dwell on the past. We don't want to dwell there, but we do want to heal it. Think of how much brighter your future could be if you stored and healed your past appropriately in the way in which you deserve. Because until we fully do, it's going to be an anchor for our life. Until we fully heal our past, it will always be like a shadow or a cloud over our head, there to remind us, there to trigger us, there to shame us. It likes to hang out. And so until we can form a closer, better, healthier relationship with it, it will almost force you in a way to bring it into your consciousness. So although we didn't do 15 reasons, we did 7. Like I said, I'm going to do a part 2 that's going to come out next week, because I do think that all these topics are relevant and I want at least one of them to land with each and every one of you. So stay tuned for that. I want you guys to just take a moment. Obviously, this is a deeper topic, and anytime I dive into this stuff, I like to do a checkout to see where you're at. So if you could assess for yourself right now, 0 to 10, where you are, how you're feeling, where you're feeling it in your body, and what maybe this brought up for you. Maybe there's a part of you that's like, yeah, I've been thinking about going to therapy for a while, but I've been putting it off. I've been thinking about visiting my past for a while, but I've been scared. I want you to know that you're not alone in that. If all of us could just admit that it's a scary place to be, I think we'd all feel a little less scared. But because I think we paint a picture of each other as this fake thing, we all hold the same shame and the same narratives and the same stories, yet we're naive in pretending that we don't. So I'll be the first to admit that I know it's scary, I know it's overwhelming, I know it's not fun, but I also know that it is so worth it. And I also know that you can come out of the other side of that so much stronger than you could have ever realized. And you owe it to yourself to heal your past. No matter what age you are, I don't care if you're 80 years old listening to this, you deserve to heal your past. Your past deserves to have that peace and rest so that you can continue on with the rest of your life. So, heavier episode today. sending you guys all so much extra love. If you're looking to connect, if you'd like to hop on a call, if you'd like to work together, it would be my absolute honor. So send me a message, send me an email, message me on Instagram, whatever it is you'd like to do to connect. I would absolutely love to do so. So sending you guys all so much love. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. And I look forward to chatting with you all next week. Bye, you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I absolutely love connecting with you all, so make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am at Jessie Brown 13. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to leave a review or share with someone you think would enjoy. I look forward to chatting with you all next episode. And remember, get out of your head and into your heart.